So this is Yolanda Comedy, and I direct the Center for Advancing Science and Engineering Capacity at AAAS. We were the ones that were given the grant from the National Science Foundation to send female faculty at minority-serving institutions to the gender summits. And I'd like to just give you a little bit of background on that and talk about why this webinar was so important for us. So several years ago, we had a grant called Mentoring Women in International Research Collaborations in STEM, and that grant just ended a couple months ago. We're in the process of talking to the National Science Foundation about continuing that grant. And one of their thoughts about a year ago was to try to give some women the opportunity to go to the Gender Summit and create networking opportunities with international research collaborators so that when we started the grant again, we would have more people that were eligible to apply. What we found last time is we had a decent amount of applications, but we certainly would have liked to have had more. And we found that there was a lot of unevenness about the preparation of the women who were given the grants. So some had knowledge about international research collaborations. They had people they could reach out to in their fields to immediately create those kind of collaborations. Others did not have that benefit at all, so it took them quite a while to really get their research projects up and running. So our goal with sending people like you guys to the gender summits was to help you begin to lay the groundwork for creating these kind of collaborations so that if NSF decides to fund this again, we will have some people that are, ready to come out of the box and be successful. So we wanted to just ask a few questions about your experience. We're going to send women to 2 more gender summits. We sent 2 people to South Africa, 4 of you, as you know, to Korea, and we'll send 4 each to Germany and Mexico. So we hope to get better with each person that we send. And I think that what we would like to do here is really to get feedback from you guys on what your experience was, what would have been helpful to help you be even more successful. And so I think that here I'd kind of like to just turn it over to Hasna and have her start asking you a few questions about the program. And I love this picture so that I have the opportunity to see what all of you look like. Since I didn't get the opportunity to meet you. Hasna, do you mind just going through the picture and telling me who everybody is so I have an idea of who I'm talking with on the webinar?
Okay, so this picture from left to right, we have Dr. Deban Dishart. She is a geophysicist. She is one of the 2 geophysicists in the United States.
Actually,
no, 2 hydro. 2
hydro, okay.
2 hydro geophysicists of women as hydro geophysicists of, colored women. That's what it is.
Okay, so
I think we will go around, and everyone can give a brief background about themselves. So the second person is Dr. Joanne Powell from Clark-Atlanta University. The third person, I skipped myself, the third person is Dr. Aline Colrose. She's from Morgan State University. And then we have also Dr. Tabitha Hardy. And if you don't mind, perhaps just give a brief background once we start with talking about your experiences at the Gender Summit.
Yeah, why don't everybody introduce themselves the way they would, do so that Hasna, wasn't stuck trying to give people's background. So if we can just go ahead and start with you again, Deboni, that would be great.
Okay, it's Deban, and I am a hydrogeophysicist as well as a hydrogeologist, and as Hasna said, I'm actually one of 2 women of color who are hydrogeophysicists. I always find myself alone at meetings, and so I'm an associate professor here in geosciences at Central State University, which is a historically black college and university. That's me.
Okay, how about Arlene? I'm sorry, Joanne?
Hi, so this is Joanne. I'm an assistant professor in biological sciences, and I have an appointment at a research center, the Center for Cancer Research and Therapeutic Development at Clark Atlanta. So I'm a cancer biologist, and I work on how environmental factors affect cancer progression.
Arlene?
Okay, yes, I'm Arlene Cole-Rhodes. I'm professor of electrical engineering at Morgan State University. I work in signal processing applications, developing algorithms for signal processing applications, wireless communications, and image processing. I think that's it. I mean, a lot of the time, like Devon said, when I go to technical meetings, I am usually the only black woman, you know, doing a presentation. One of few.
Hi, everybody. Oh, sorry. Hi, everybody. I'm Tabitha Hardy. I'm an assistant professor of biology at Stillman College in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. I am, by training, a cancer biologist. And what I'll tell you is that my department is extremely small. There aren't very many people to collaborate with at the school. And so my primary work is with dietary phytochemicals, basically looking at how things we eat or drink can protect us from cancer and may be able to prevent cancer.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So I'd like to start out by Hasna. Do you want to start out by asking them some of the questions that we came up with?
Sure. So perhaps starting off with the basic question, which is, what was the reason why you wanted to attend the summit, the Gender Summit? Anyone can start.
Okay, one of the reasons, my key reason for attending really is, you know, international collaborations. There are a lot of scientists out there who actually do a lot of geophysical work along my line, because I also work on geochemical characterization of geothermal systems, but also I do a lot of self-potential and resistivity work in geophysics, and so there are a lot of folks who do it. There are very few women who get into that research, and I thought that going to the summit would have allowed me to link up with you know, professors who may in turn allow me to link up with these other scientists in these areas. You know, it's, even though you never had many, well, you didn't have any other geoscientists there, this was a nice route to actually being introduced and extending my research collaborative network.
Yeah, for me, I was interested in going to the conference because it was advertised as, you know, sort of developing your international collaborations, and I'm at that point where I'd really like to do some international work. I've been very successful, you know, in collaborating with people, you know, people at institutions within the U.S. I've had a number of collaborations, and I'd like to be able to do work which has a sort of broader impact, you know, around the world. And I am interested in different cultures, you know, so sort of get the cultural experience as well.
This is Joanne. So my reasons for attending, one, I thought that having these types of collaborations might broaden the scope of my own research by getting, you know, a point of view by an international collaboration. And I also thought that collaborating with someone internationally might present new funding mechanisms that I could explore. And for my institution, international collaborations are encouraged for promotion and advancement as well. So it was an opportunity to gain that criteria.
So this is Tabitha, and I was really interested in attending because of the networking opportunities and because of the opportunities to forge collaborations. And particularly, I was interested in attending the conference in Korea because my research is involving breast cancer, and one of the dietary phytochemicals that I look at is EGCG, which is found in green tea. And when I kind of have done some research into this, the Asian American population has a lower incidence of breast cancer, and I'm hoping to find some collaborators that can kind of give us some insight into why that may be. We think that a part of it is dietary, but if there are other cultural factors that are involved, I'd love to have some insight there as well.
Okay, so based on what your reasons were for going, could you give us some feedback on whether or not you were able to accomplish what you hoped you would accomplish when you went to the meeting? And then after that, we'll also give you an opportunity to make some suggestions on how we could make changes to facilitate that for other women.
So this is Joanne again. I think for me, in going there or having the goal of making collaborations was a bit more difficult than I thought, because the focus of the meeting was all about gender inequality in the sciences, and so I didn't really get to talk to people about their actual work, what they're doing in the laboratory as much as it was about gender issues. I was able to identify people who could link me up to some of those people at their institutions, but in terms of the actual science being discussed, I think it was different than what I expected.
Yes, this is Arlene. I agree with that. It was more of a policy conference than a technical conference, and it was sort of hard to find people to know who was in your particular area, who you might be able to collaborate with. But otherwise, I mean, it was also pleasantly different in the sense that it wasn't the usual technical conference that I've attended in the past. This was actually on policy, and it was different for me in that I've not been to a policy conference before, and it made me start thinking about, well, maybe I could get involved in policy issues. So in that sense, it was sort of very enlightening for me.
So this is Tabitha, and I'll just piggyback off what Joanne said. I think that it's a little bit difficult to make those direct contacts, but there was a poster session where people were presenting their research, and I think with that, it was very helpful to be able to see their research topics and then to kind of identify with them and speak with them about the research that they were working on. So I think that was really helpful in at least trying to identify people who may have been in similar research areas.
I would agree to some extent, yes, that, I would not have found any geoscientists there. It was mostly folks who were doing policy or geography, which is not geology, of course. But I managed, however, I got offers from 2 faculty there, 2 attendees, who reached out to me for collaborations, and, I welcomed that. So I was successful in that respect. And I've seen having attended the sessions and the panels and so on, there are a couple of people additionally who I believe are, very good help to me in regards to my next step, in my career or profession. So I've made a couple of collaborations, and I've also reached out to members of our group who attended South Korea, the summit in South Korea. So I reached out to Tabitha, Arlene, and Joanne. I got responses from Arlene because she does signal processing, which is very relevant to the geophysics I do. So I'm going to be working on that with her. Tabitha reached out to me regarding cells. So there are some genetics that I need to. I'm not a geneticist, but I think Tabitha or Joanne could help me along that line. to actually blend this research into what we call medical geology. So there are prospects for me, I must say.
Okay,
yeah, I
great.
think we did develop a very good rapport, the four of us. I mean, we got to know each other, and that was nice.
I agree.
Okay, so I'll say that, that part for us, while may not be directly what NSF was thinking about when they gave us the funding, is excellent because, several of you mentioned the isolation that we often feel as underrepresented minorities in science conferences. And so the fact that you guys were able to create relationships with each other, I think is fantastic. For me, that's a big indicator of success. I think that it is very difficult. This is not a conference designed for your specific field, so it is difficult to necessarily find someone, the perfect person when you go to the conference. But the kind of feedback that I'd like to have from you now is whether you have ideas on these next two cohorts when they go, if there's anything that you think should be done by the participants or AAAS in advance to help you get even more out of the conference than you were able to get when you went to Korea.
Yes, so this is Joanne again. I think it would be a tremendous help if they're able to identify someone and maybe even make contact to say, I'd like to speak to you further at the summit, if there's a way that they can have a list of attendees and they can identify people who may have some overlap with what they're interested in.
Okay, so you're saying a list of attendees in advance?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
With their special expertise.
It's in their discipline, yeah.
Okay, so I'll, just to give you the truth about that, that really has everything to do with who's putting on the Gender Summit.
Right.
Absolutely nothing to do with that. So there's no way for us to force that issue, but we can definitely ask the people that are putting it together to the extent possible if there's any way for them to do that. I think that it's not likely, but, it's definitely worth a try.
Right, and I also think with hindsight now, if I were going back now, what I would do is a little bit of legwork before I go and identify people in Seoul who also have, even if they're not at the summit, we're in the city for, this amount of time, to say I'm a U.S. investigator coming for this reason and your research is, interesting and may overlap with me. Can we talk? Even if they're not at the summit, I would have done that knowing what I know now.
Okay, that's great because that's actually what we had hoped people would do. And so I think for the next group in our application process, we tried to make it really clear that our expectation was that you reached out to people in the country that you're going to and try to make, the opportunity, since you're there a whole week and the meeting is really 2 days, that you give yourself the opportunity to meet people, even if they're not, directly related to what you think you can do, that there's always a possibility that they can introduce you to others and, that you can get some idea of collaboration ideas. So that is definitely what we hope will happen.
And also, we did get a list, while we were there, or at least I did, of possible collaborators. But to me, it was late in the sense that it was, I was already there and I didn't really know how to even go about contacting, I guess, an email. But I think we were in the second day, the conference was about to end, and it would have been nice to get that list in advance and have made contact, as Joanne was saying, so that maybe we could set up an appointment while we were actually there.
Okay. Okay, any other ideas on, so I guess one of the things, too, that I'm interested in is, the big purpose, again, was to further your own research and to create international collaborations. But I would be curious about what else you got from being there. So just, you know, what you really enjoyed while you were there. And it doesn't have to be academic. You know, did you enjoy the food? Did you enjoy meeting certain people? I mean, what else did you get out of this experience that you think may be helpful in your career?
So I have a few things on that, but if I could just step back to one more suggestion about what would be helpful. I think if Tabitha mentioned the poster presentations, it may have been helpful if I could have presented a poster, because maybe there was someone that I didn't connect with. If they saw the work that I was doing, then they would have come to me instead of me trying to find them through the sea of people. So I know there was an opportunity given for us to do oral presentations, and that those were limited slots. But then if we didn't have the opportunity to do the oral, could we have presented a poster? Okay. Been a part of a poster presentation. And then,
you know, just honestly, that again is a separate, that isn't up to us. But I think what we can think about if they do this again next year is maybe trying to work with people way in advance so that we're able to know what the process is for those kind of things when we put out the call for applications.
Okay.
And in terms of what I enjoyed, that's a pretty lengthy list. So I absolutely enjoyed the ladies that I got to attend the conference with. It was wonderful getting to know them, and I'm looking, you know, forward to them being a great network moving forward as well. It was my first time in Asia, so just to, you know, experience the culture in the way that we did was a great, you know, it was just a great time overall.
Great.
Well, I basically enjoyed the opportunity to have gone there, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity. I thought I came back very rich in knowledge and exposure, and it was a great way to start off my academic year. You know, very refreshing. And so, you know, I was approached by a couple of folks there in very high positions, you know, in regards to there was Dr. Hong Kum, what's her name now? Oh, she's Hong Kum Lee. She actually invited me to request samples that she collected from Antarctica and the Arctic to do some geochemical analysis on these samples, and which I don't know, I guess she realized what my background was, but I thought that was honorable. And so I'm looking forward to that collaboration. And there was Dr. Roy, who we're going to work on climate change and gender issues in the Midwest. So it was good. It was remarkable. It was the only thing I never liked was the food, because I'm a vegetarian, pescatarian, and so I just didn't like the food. But apart from that, I was okay.
Okay, cool.
This is Joan again, and can I make one comment? And this is one thing I've been wondering. I noticed that the bond had a lot more interaction and people doing these, and I wonder if it's because you actually had the opportunity to present. And so they got an idea to see what, you know, who you are and what you're doing and all of these things. And so that opened up the door a little bit wider, you know, for people to come up and approach you, because approaching me would have been, you know, completely cold. No idea who I am or what I work on or any of those things. So I do think having a forum, regardless of whether it's posters or a talk or whatever, to have you displayed or your work displayed is helpful in some.
Joanne, I think I must agree with you. I felt, and I personally communicated that to Dr. Comedy, that the fact that Dr. Vicious Bond, she presented, and she talked a lot about the conditions of women faculty at minority serving institutions in the United States, and I think just by itself defining what minority serving institutions are and how do women fit in STEM may have been very attractive to an audience that is not necessarily American, and might have attracted their curiosity.
And so, how did you have the opportunity to do that, Devon?
Oh, I was, Hasnat actually sent me a correspondence from the person who directed the conference. I don't remember, what was her name? Kirsty? She was the person who collaborated the program. So she requested talks from each and every one of us 4 participants. I opted to do it because I figured that having gone through the experience of being tenured and promoted and, the struggles, that it would have been nice, it would fit in well with the theme of the conference, and which mentoring was a theme. So that's how I got, and there are a couple of ladies from Korea, professors from Korea and China and Japan and Mongolia. They approached me telling me that they really appreciated my talk and that it was very refreshing, and that they even asked me for ideas. I mean, Dr. Holcomb Lee, she even said, I wanted to meet with you and talk with you because I wanted some ideas as to what I could do in my institute, because she's the director, she's a principal research scientist and former director of the Korea Polar Research Institute. So, she wanted ideas, I guess because of the way I presented it. I used a model, which was what I went through, was my model explaining how I think women, in STEM, how they need to be aggressive to get where they want to get. And I think that's what attracted her and other people, I guess. That's what I have to say.
And could some of you who decided not to present talk a little bit about, what your thought process was there, and whether there was anything that we could have done to help you feel more comfortable with that opportunity?
So this is Tabitha. Yeah.
It's not that we decided not to present. When we actually
it was there one.
It wasn't available. It was only available, I think, maybe to one person, and Devon was the first one to respond.
Well, actually, so I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I didn't hear the other person.
Okay. This is Tabitha, and I actually reached out to Hasna with the desire to present as well. However, I asked her about the session and what the topic of the session was, and she told me what it was, and my talk really didn't fit into the session. I was still really willing to do that, but I kind of felt like mine was more on the research side of things, and I wasn't really sure that it actually fit into the topic of the session. Like we previously stated, the sessions were more related to gender research and people who did specifically do research related to gender. And I don't think that that's, for most of us, our particular area of research. Of course, we could have probably presented things at the poster session, which I think would be a great opportunity. So I'm hoping that that will be an area that future attendees can explore.
So is there any way for us to facilitate that? So I definitely understand your point that it's, you don't want to present on something that's not your area of expertise. And as I've stated before, all of these conferences are different and put on by different groups of people in different countries. So they, have very definite ways that they decide to do things. I thought that in South Africa, for example, AAAS had a lot of contacts. So we were able to help facilitate some of the discussions and some of the ability of people to present and do radio shows and that kind of thing. We had contacts in Korea, but they were a little different. They were more like Jerry, who you heard from, and people that were attending versus the people that were putting it on, although I think Hasna can comment on this, but I thought that the people putting on the conference were very useful and very nice about trying to give us opportunities when they saw them. So I guess I just wanted to get an idea if there's anything you think, your thoughts, even though we won't necessarily be able to do them because it depends on who's putting the conference on, but, thoughts about other ways that we can make it easy for you to make contact. So you've mentioned, poster presentations and the ability to give a talk, the ability to meet people in advance. Are there any other things that you want to suggest? Okay.
Yeah. I think that summarizes it.
Okay. That's good. Okay, Hasna, do you want to comment a little bit on, kind of what the process is like when we work with the teams on the ground to put these on, and if there's any suggestions that you may have?
Well, I think that what I noticed in being in contact with the GS6 coordinator, Kirsty, she reached out first to us, which was wonderful. So that showed the willingness to collaborate with AAAS. But I think that the fact that it was late in time and they were very busy in organizing the conference, they had less time. So lead time to be in touch with the organizers of conferences, I think would help a lot. So some preparation ahead of time. 2-3 months, if not more, before the conference.
Okay. Okay, so
can I just say one? I'll piggyback on that too, because I noticed in the program that, they didn't get all the speakers, the photos of all the speakers and their background in there. So there was a little problem with the program, the actual book. So, they should not do like how Kirsty did it. Was she invited speakers? That was great. She did it at the last moment. So there was not enough time, to organize things. So we'd hope that that doesn't occur again, with the organizers, that they really give some leeway or some time to allow for little things that could pop in at the last moment, That would be nice.
Okay, and I don't have any idea what their lead time is.
Yeah.
I know that we did one in the U.S. last year, and the National Science Foundation was the person in charge of that. And I have to admit, this is not disparaging against anyone, but even that one was kind of unorganized. So I think that the amount of lead time they get in knowing that they're going to be the one to do the conference, and when the conference actually takes place, is probably not large enough. They're probably, and these conferences are, relatively new, so I think that they'll continue to improve some of those things.
Sure.
So another question I wanted to ask, and I would love to, this is one thing that I would really love to say, when we pick the next group that will go to Germany, I would really love it if we could have another webinar in which you guys talk to them a little bit about your experience, to see if their experience can be made better by your wisdom, but also to kind of increase the collaboration between all of you. So possibly on that call you'll meet somebody that's in the same field or a similar field, or you'll just be exposed to more women of color who are out there in the science world trying to get things done. So if that ends up being possible, that would really be wonderful. And we'll invite you, and if you're able to do it, we'll be really appreciative. But I also wanted to get an idea of what advice you would give to the women who are going to go to the next two conferences. And it can be something that you've already said, or it can be in addition to that. I mean, we've been taking notes, and I think we have some ideas of what your advice would be. But just think about things, and it can be as little as what kind of clothes you could take, to as big as what kind of ways you can set up to do collaboration. But just ideas to make people feel more comfortable before they go.
if it's possible, make contacts before you leave, and that, so that you could have set up an appointment during the time that you're there to actually meet the people personally, someone who's, in your field. Or who
Okay, and that's great. And I wanted to ask you, along with that, if the time that we give you to go is reasonable for you to do that. That's really why NSF wanted to give you, more days in the actual conference so that you would have the opportunity. Was that enough time?
It may have been if I had set up in advance, but I think it was good, because we had 3 days of the conference and then we had a day before and a day after. So for me, I think it was good.
Okay, thanks.
Nice. If AAS, I don't mean to interrupt, but if AAS had a list of disciplines, I would imagine there must be a list available of all their members who are prospective attendees of these conferences, because I'm sure all of them are not going there to present. They just want to actually attend the conference and get something from it. Then possibly if we know the discipline of these people attending, then it might be a nice way to forge collaborations or meetings with the prospective attendees while they're there or whatever it is. That's another way to do it too.
Okay.
Hey, this is Tabitha. And I think Joanne had a great idea about contacting people who are just in the general area. I don't know how many people have had the opportunity to just go and visit another part of the world. So I think that, maybe making contact with those people, even if they're not conference attendees, that's a great idea. And I'd also advise the future attendees to really try to immerse themselves in the cultural experience of being someplace else as well. I thoroughly enjoyed my experience at Gender Summit 6. Yes, from the fan dances to the food, it was a great cultural experience. Absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, I found it very refreshing, actually. As Devon said, coming back, starting the semester, I felt really refreshed and ready to go.
Okay. I think that's great. I mean, from our standpoint, with what we want to accomplish when we get money for things like this, a lot of the things you've said have really resonated with us. I mean, I love the fact that, you guys all know each other now. Hopefully we can have something where you'll know other cohorts. As a matter of fact, in the next grant I write, I would even be, willing to put in something where there's a possibility for people to meet in person, because I think that, just building those networks is very useful. And, we're excited to do two more events and take people. And I think in Germany we have some pretty good contacts of people that were attending. Can you give me a little bit of feedback on your meeting with Jerry? She's the president of AAAS this year, and whether or not things like that are helpful, because we normally know, at least a couple key women who are going that would be useful for you to meet with. But can you give us a little bit of feedback on that?
Yeah, that was very good. I sort of enjoyed the meeting with Jerry because she sort of went around to each of us, sort of spoke to us about where we were in our career and what our future plans might be, where we wanted to go. And I mean, for me personally, she sort of pointed out certain, fellowships that I might be interested in. I said that if I was going to do international research in a specific area of the world, maybe Africa might be the area, and she came up with a number of sort of things I could look up, that might deal with African research, like the what is it, the Mandela African Institute of Science and Technology, and then she talked about her coach workshop that she runs, you know, for sort of leadership, women in leadership, or sort of building leadership skills in women. So for me, I liked that part of it as well, getting to meet her and talk to her personally.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else?
Yeah, actually, I thought that was an awesome experience to be able to have that time to sit down with her and for her to take time out of her schedule to speak with each of us individually. And clearly, as you see in the picture, I'm just spilling my guts there. So, and she, right, and she listened and then advised us all on possible career moves, and even helped us learn how to negotiate and how to talk to people about where we wanted to be. And so I really thought that that was amazing advice. And I'll say this, one of the things that Gender Summit did for me was really help me realize the importance of mentoring and become more interested in things like tiered mentoring programs. So having these people that are in different positions that can, you know, guide you and say, hey, we did it, you can do it, this is how we do it. So I think that that might be another area that AAAS and NSF are interested in as well, in maybe providing mentoring opportunities for females in the STEM areas.
Okay, thank you.
From my session, really, I'm actually, as an associate professor, you know, I remember she was saying that when you're promoted and tenured, you become expensive, you know, so, you know, I can understand what she was saying, but yeah, she did offer some advice as to, you know, how to move on, you know, and what needed to be done, because we, you know, we have to realize, we have to recognize where we are within an institution and within our professional life. And so I thought it was a good exchange with her. You know, I rather enjoyed it. The overall conference I really enjoyed as well, because it made me realize that, you know, we in the United States, we're not the only one who's faced with the problem of lack of diversity in STEM. It's a global problem, and it's just that the Europeans seem to be doing it, you know, seem to be tackling it much better than we do in the United States, is what came across to us, because their women seem to be advancing relatively nicely compared to the United States or Asia. I mean, the Australians also seem to have tapped in on you know, how to deal with the problem. So it was a good exposure. I mean, there are some folks there who had good strategies. I mean, Dr. Kurt Rice was, you know, I sat with him and we spoke for quite a long time. He's American, you know, but he's the rector of the university up in Norway. And so we talked about the problems in STEM, and he was telling me ways that they were dealing with it, you know, ways they were retaining women. And I thought that was nice. You know, we saw different shades of the same story. How people were dealing with it, how they were succeeding. Why is it people weren't succeeding, and what needed to be done. So it was a really great exposure on the problems of gender diversity and mentoring. You know, if anything came out of that conference, it's mentoring. It's very key. It's that every single faculty member, man, woman, or has to have a good mentor. If you don't have a good mentor, then you're not going to succeed. So that was what I got from the conference, and it has drummed into folks over and over. So I really appreciated that. And it opened a lot of doors for me.
So let me ask you a question about that, though. So then I'm kind of curious, and I don't want to take too much more of your guys' time, but I'm kind of curious about your own personal experiences with mentoring and whether or not you have mentors, and how those relationships were developed and how they work. Because that's another thing that the National Science Foundation and AAAS have been really interested in over the years. We've had a number of conferences on that, and quite honestly have been kind of surprised about the lack of mentoring that a lot of people are getting.
I can talk about that in my situation. I was not coming in this is not my first university position here, but because I came from SUNY Buffalo and Illinois Wesleyan. And so there I had mentors. Here, I want to say that in my department, I didn't have mentors, or if the mentors were there, they're not very good examples of mentors. It was people who were outside of my department who actually got me involved in advance. That's the thing. So I learned the hard way that good mentors are very important. So this is why this conference rings so clearly out to me. Mentoring is key. And if it wasn't for the mentors outside, I have international mentors too, by the way. And those mentors were great. And so they contributed to my promotion and tenure, I must say. They wrote excellent letters to me because they know my research. They know that we've been talking from day one. So you need to have international as well as national and interdepartmental mentorship is not just in your institution alone. Mentorship must be female, male. It must be as wide as it can be because you need all of those folks to be pushing you, driving you. It's very key. So I really appreciated the conference.
Okay. Anybody else?
I just wanted to, this is a very great question to answer about mentoring, but I just wanted to point out to the audience that the webinar is set up as audience are muted. So if you have questions, and I see that there are audience folks out there that have questions trying to raise their hands, please type them in the chat box and we'll answer, we'll take the questions. Thank you.
So I'll go back to the mentoring question. One of the things that I have started to develop is my own personal mentoring team. But the only reason that I started that was because at my current institution, the people who are in the same department with me, we've all been there for less than 4 years. So that's a bit of an issue, and it's kind of a blind leading the blind situation in that respect. So I recognize the importance of having people at different tiers of their career. And I think that they can come from any area, and I think Devon made a great comment when she said, you just have to find people, male, female, whoever it is that that can help you achieve your goals. And I'm really interested now at kind of looking at my undergraduates because I have so many females that are at this stage very interested in the STEM field, but we clearly see that as we progress throughout our professional careers, we lose these females and we lose the equity there. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm very much interested in thinking about tiered mentoring programs.
Okay, great. Thank you. Hasna, do you have questions?
No, not yet.
Something else I found interesting at the conference was that it seems that in some countries in Southeast Asia that there is actually parity between men and women in science. I think Myanmar was one, and I'm not sure, I think Malaysia might have been another. And it was interesting because I couldn't exactly figure out why that was the situation, but I just thought it was interesting. It is a worldwide problem, the low participation of women in STEM, and when you talk about engineering, it's even worse. It's like single digits, sort of percentage-wise. But I did think it was interesting that they had like 50% participation of women in STEM in some of the Southeast Asian countries, and I was thinking to myself, it might be an interesting thing to look at to see why is that the situation.
Very good. Okay, if we didn't get questions from the audience, I think I have really gained a lot from this. Hasna, do you have anything that you want to say before we end? or any questions that you might have?
I guess what I would say is my take on the travel to Korea for the Gender Summit is I really enjoyed our discussions, the five of us. I learned a lot more about women faculty in minority serving institutions, about the conditions they work in, about the constraints around them, and sort of that was a key thing that we felt in the summit. I really hope that that sort of shared experience that we had there would continue, even if we don't attend summits, that would continue in some ways or others, because I think that that dialogue just informs us all, and also would help. I would wish that it would take us to more than informing each other, but also helping out each other in some ways. So from our end, we will make sure that you are informed of that news, that things that come up from our end that are relevant to you. Just because we invested ourselves in this one experience, and we want to see longer term benefit in it.
Great. And I would like to echo that as well. We definitely don't know everything, and we don't know everybody, but if there's anything that you think we can help you with, please feel free to reach out to us, and we'll do our best to either help or find people that we think would be helpful. I also really look forward to continuing the relationship with the group. I hope that you will interact with the next set of women that are going to go, and that at some point, we can do something together as a team, and make sure that we continue to build these networks, relationships, and the possibility for your collaborations.
Sounds great.
Great. Okay. Thanks so much, very, very much for doing the webinar. Did you want to say something?
No, I'm fine. Thanks.
Okay. But thank you very much for your time, and again, we look forward to staying connected with you.